So RWBY Ice Queendom is officially done and over with, and I want to give my general thoughts and opinions on this show now that it's fresh in my mind after watching the finale. And I have to say, overall, I enjoyed my time with RWBY Ice Queendom. It was nothing amazing or phenomenal like I was hoping for and how a lot of fans were kind of hoping for, but I don't think that it's also terrible, bad, or god-awful like there are other people online that I'm sure are saying about the series. There are a lot of good qualities, there are a lot of nice ideas placed into this series, but again, there are missed opportunities and things that could have been explored a lot more. Before I get into my general thoughts on the show, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. It really does help, and it shows you guys want to see more of this type of content in the future. I do really like RWBY overall, and I would like to talk about it at some point in the future again, as in the early days of the channel, I would try and make RWBY type reviews and videos, but I kind of stopped and I kind of have a new focus now. So if you guys would like to see me do RWBY in the future, I'd be all for it. But with that out of the way, let's get right into the video right after this intro. So RWBY Ice Queendom, like I said, has a lot of cool ideas and nice moments, in additions to RWBY proper as being canon adjacent, basically being a side story in between volumes 1 and volume 2, to account for that time and add extra story beats to the show that won't overall drastically affect the overall story, but could be a nice companion piece as a nice side story to help with developments of characters and adding more to the world of Remnant. But there are a lot of missed opportunities, which I'll get into in a sec, but I just want to praise the show for one thing and one thing alone that I think we can all agree on. RWBY Ice Queendom treated all the main characters of Team RWBY with respect given to their initial character traits, their personalities, and just how they interact with each other as a whole. Whether it be getting on each other's nerves, Yang acting like a cool older sister, or just swinging zingers towards every other character, Blake being Blake, Weiss acting stuck up but trying her best, and RWBY overall just trying to be the best leader out there despite her being way younger than everyone else there and wants to live up to the expectations. This series takes what we love about these four characters and actually sticks with it and plays with it throughout. And I think Yang is the best example of this, because I think Yang and RWBY really do feel like sisters. There are context clues and just showing us how they act as sisters. And it's something that I really wanted to see in the main show past Volume 3, as when Yang and RWBY are reintroduced, they don't really act too much like siblings anymore. It's now just the plot is taking control, and there's not too much time for the characters to act independently of one another or interacting in ways that they did previously, which is kind of a shame, because I do like the idea of siblings being on the same team, being part of the main cast. That's a really cool idea. But I think Ice Queendom does this very well with certain things like RWBY and Yang playing rock, paper, scissors to who has to stay behind in a room while the others go investigate the rest of the tower. RWBY and Yang bickering from time to time, Yang coddling RWBY but also trying to be a good older sister and give her the space she needs to grow as a person. There's a lot of added scenes in the first 3 episodes alone that add more to the characters, and it's something that I really do enjoy. However, there are things that I'll get into that I do want to criticize. But besides the characters of Team RWBY, that I think even Ice Queendom, despite it being focusing on Weiss, does do a good job with just showing the characters being themselves and acting in character overall. The animation at points is really good, and this is more like a mixed bag for me, but in terms of the animation, I liked it in certain portions. The art design, relatively well done, but we have to talk about the elephant in the room in terms of its pacing and just the weird distribution of the animation budget. The first 3 episodes were honestly pretty good, if not rushed, and we had like 3 great moments of awesome fights and amazing animation, which I was blown away for, and I think it caught everyone's attention. Then we have a bunch of episodes in the middle between the first 3 and the last 2, where there isn't a lot of great animation and some, honest to God, really poor or bad animation, with the last 2 episodes having again really good animation in the show, and that's something I really liked. But it probably has to do with something with the budget or how quickly they had to bring out the show, and with the amount of episodes that they had, they probably had to fill out some things, which I'll get into a bit later, but when the animation was good, it was really good, and when it was poor, it was pretty poor and lackluster, which kind of hurt my enjoyment of the series a bit. But it happens with a lot of shows, so I'm not going to fault this as a RWBY Ice Queendom thing, but it did feel like an early anime to a certain extent when it comes to animation and budgeting. On to the Grimm of the season, which I have to say is a really cool and fascinating idea, because the whole concept of someone having a nightmare world where their distorted thoughts, desires, and innermost demons are brought to life, as well as their insecurities, is really a really cool idea. I got major Persona vibes while going through this show. I've played Persona 5 a bunch of times because I just enjoyed the game and its story so much. Despite, even though there is some faults in it, it's relatively one of my favorite games, and seeing a similar idea for this show honestly made me really invested. I mean, characters go into a person's inner world. They have to find their way to the core to basically help them out, or just bring them to their senses, find different ways to get there, etc., etc. Facing off against a twisted version of themselves. It's Persona 101. It's Persona 5. And I like that idea. It's not a Persona 5 exclusive thing in terms of finding someone's inner self and their demons, but it's a really cool idea, and it wasn't explored to its fullest. There's a lot of like showing us but not telling us, which is really much appreciated. But a lot of the stuff is also overly explained to us. Like this one scene where Jean lets out the quote-unquote sillies, and it's just a bunch of mini Weisses, which is basically all of her childish ambitions and wants locked away, and just going crazy after being unleashed, showing that she had to put all this stuff away if she wants to be the heiress to the Dust Company. This felt overly explained by Blake in this scene, which I think we could all kind of take it by context clues. You just do like one line like, Weiss must have suppressed all of her childish ambitions. You know, something like that. It's a lot better than it being overly explained for a solid, like, minute. And there's also things like characters looking different with different designs, their weapons being changed, or just overall decent context clues that I feel like could have been done a lot more, because we're in a dream world, we can go crazy with things. But there are limitations that you have to do with these types of stories to not go full-on crazy. The Grimm itself did not feel like much of a big bad or final boss to an extent. It's a cool idea, but the thing is, it didn't really feel like a constant threat. No, the constant threat was the nightmare version of Weiss, Negative Weiss. I'm just going to call her Nightmare Weiss because it sounds a bit cooler, constantly getting in the hero's way. But the problem with that is that it's a lot of standing, talking, and posturing, and when it comes to them fighting, it's short and not the biggest spectacle. While it's fun to see Weiss in her dream world where she's supposed to be more or less unbeatable, where she has most of the control, just winning all her fights, the fights themselves are too short or too dragged out in terms of just standing around and talking, or, like I said, just monologuing for minutes on end. And this happens throughout the show, and it makes me feel like, okay, it's very possible. I don't know what this is, but when they were given permission to make the show, they had a couple of checklist things to do and had a limited amount of episodes to do that. So they had to find a way to like stall for time, I guess, so they can get to the specific point, because the beginning, Volume 1, really quick, really short summary of everything that's going on, along with bonus scenes that we didn't get in the original show, which can only be seen by, years of hindsight and future information. And then everything up to the very first episode of Volume 2. So I'm not, honestly, it's a weird thing, because episodes feel like they're retreading old ground multiple times. They're removed from the nightmare, they go back in the nightmare about 2 times, RWBY about 3 times, and we get a lot of cool things throughout that aren't really followed through. Like RWBY gets infected with a nightmare. We don't see her nightmare, we only get a little piece of it, and somehow Jean manages to break her out with no real explanation whatsoever. We kind of guess it's because of his latent semblance or whatever, but there's not too much to it. Blake gets infected with the nightmare that had Jean at the end of episode 3, which was a really cool idea, which ended up being something really cool and unexpected. It's a nice curveball, but it would have been nice for things to go a little bit more, how should I put this, more in detail. Does get more into Blake's nightmare also. yeah, we don't really get too much for Blake's nightmares. This is literally the last two, within episodes 11 and episodes 10 and 11 with the whole Nightmare Blake situation. And then we kind of conclude with Nightmare Weiss, but it's not the final boss. It's a weird thing. Despite episode 11 having a really good fight with Team RWBY versus Nightmare Blake after RWBY manages to somehow free Weiss, which insert Silver Eyes scene right here. I like the idea of the Silver Eyes, but it just felt like a Deus Ex Machina in the situation. But it's a whole thing. It was a really nice and well animated scene, I must admit. But I didn't think we were going to get this scene, because technically Volume 3 is the first time RWBY uses her silver eyes. It's a whole thing. I'm kind of going jumbled up here. It's just my basic thoughts. I'm sorry if I'm going back and forth with things I liked or don't like or whatever. But the thing I just have to say is that with all the cool ideas, with a lot of bonus scenes that would have been really well thought out and added a lot more depth to the characters and just made us understand them a lot more, Ice Queendom just feels like it's bloated in terms of just redoing the same thing 3 times. RWBY going in for reconnaissance, that makes sense. But we don't get any explanation on Shion's semblance and the abilities and the rules of the nightmare at all. And we have to try and figure stuff out on our way, which isn't fully explained. Shion's semblance, the new character for the series, Professor Shion, their semblance is briefly explained in how it became the way it is, as in terms of like an awakening or growing of a semblance in the finale of the season, but no real explanations fully in this throughout the show. RWBY coming in with Blake and Yang. Yeah, that makes sense, but we get a lot of the episode just retreading what we did with RWBY's episode in episode 5 through episode 6. They get defeated after making it to the treasure room. I'm just gonna call it the treasure room, since I made a Persona reference comparison there. They get beat by Weiss almost instantly. They manage to do it again. They come in with John. Stuff happens. The finale happens. I'm not gonna get too into it, but there are a lot of things, especially towards the end, when Yang manages to basically have one of the really well animated moments and basically punches straight through that giant mecha statue thing, and seeing a memory of Weiss when she was a kid. Moments like that are like, okay, this is good. This is something I needed, but it was brought on either a bit too late, or it wasn't done well enough. Weiss doesn't interact with the nightmare versions of her family or people that she knows at all, outside of like few brief interactions. So not too much happens in this show that really warrants it to be this long. If anything, it feels like it's something that could have been like a 6-episode arc, maybe a 5-episode arc. And it probably would have had much better pacing. The animation would have been a lot more well done. How I would have done it, I think, would have been the best way to do this show if they were still committed to just recapping Volume 1, just with added scenes. Do like the first 4 or 5 episodes, at bare minimum, be the recap of Volume 1, because that, along with extra scenes that you added like they did in episodes 1 and 2. Then they introduced the nightmare at the end of that recap. At the end of that whole recap, I'm still salty about the Torchic fight being skipped over at the end of the Volume 1 recap. That was a really good fight, but I'm not gonna get too into it. That's why I kind of not said it until now. But make the first 5 episodes at least the recap of Volume 1 leading into the original content, and then having the original content be the rest of the show, and still have the final episode be the food fight, and everyone coming together and accepting that they're friends, being much closer than ever, and setting up for potentially another season of this RWBY anime, which, let's be honest, it would be cool. Along with the bonus scenes, we got more bonus scenes in additions to the show. It would be nice. Or hell, Team Stark prequel show. That would be really nice to make it canon also. But unfortunately, we had 3 episodes of recap with half of the 3rd episode setting up the rest of the season, and having 9 episodes of how this show played out, which cut it down by at least 2. It would have been a lot better. Or having like 6 to 6. It would have been a nice balance, half recap, half original. It helps set things up a lot better. For all I know, there were some conditions that Rooster Teeth or Team RWBY managed to like do in negotiations for like a RWBY anime, like Jean being included, even though Jean, like, I'm salty about Jean not doing anything, him being included and not doing anything at all. the pacing of the show, with certain things needing to be in there. I feel like there were certain things that RWBY wanted in the show that it ended up taking away from the overall pacing of the show. I feel like there was just a lot of outside interference, and Studio Shaft and the writing team here for this anime didn't have full free reign outside of it having to be between volumes 1 and 2. But with what we saw in this show, there was so much potential and so much great things that we could have seen if explored a bit more, that I honestly think was just a big missed opportunity. I am still in the camp that that a RWBY anime would really be good, and we've seen snippets of it throughout this anime that I honestly think were really great. But unless it was planned a lot earlier and advanced and had really a lot better pacing and more explanation for everything going on in the Nightmare world and the Grimm, it could have been amazing, because there was so much in here, like I just stated, that would have been really great. The exploration of the Nightmare, White's inner psyche, even Blake's inner psyche, which we don't really get anything into, or RWBY's. We were teased with a RWBY nightmare, but at the beginning of the next episode, after revealing, oh, she's struck in a nightmare, she gets out of it because of Jean Ex Machina. I think we were all disappointed with that. But yeah, overall, this series wasn't godright awful. It had its good moments, and it had a lot of great potential. But I just gotta be honest with my rating. I gotta give it, at the bare minimum, a 6 out of 10. It had a lot of great moments, a lot of potential, and the animation and characterization of Team RWBY was honestly on point, and it added a lot to their characters. But unfortunately, the pacing, the weird animation that happened throughout, and just the grandstanding and monologuing with no action in between just didn't do it for me. It just made it drag out even more. As well as the fact that they decided to do a recap of Volume 1, but skip over a lot of important moments and details. It's a whole thing. I don't know. It's just this. It just ends up being a missed opportunity and a bit disappointing by any RWBY fan in terms of wanting something cool and original. If they made this just a full-on original thing, I think it would have been a hell of a lot better. Give them free reign to do whatever they want with the characters, because the world itself has a lot of great potential. But yeah, 6 out of 10 it's decent. If you're a RWBY fan and you haven't seen Queendom yet, I say go right ahead. Do it in a binge. You'll get it done in an afternoon. You'll enjoy it. The weekly grind, the whole thing about watching a weekly was kind of a slog, if I'm being honest. If you watch it in bulk, it's not as bad, but the pacing issues are still prominent. I mean, I don't think there's anything that could have insert clip of Yang doing the massive punch and then the food fight really quick. This is the greatest anime I have ever seen. This is perfect in all regards. But in all seriousness, this series, it had a lot of potential. I enjoyed it for what it was. I would love to see more, and I think RWBY as a whole has a lot of potential as a franchise to do a lot with the series, with the source material and just anything regarding it. But yeah, those were my thoughts on RWBY Queendom. I'm sorry that this video turned out to be a lot longer than I initially thought it would be. But yeah, leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below on what you thought about Queendom. What do you think about the missed opportunities? Did you like the characterization of the characters? Did you like the animated moments that were done well? Would you watch another RWBY anime if it was given free reign to do its own thing? Or just a RWBY anime just retelling the main story in a 2D style with added scenes to help add more to the RWBY franchise and the story as a whole? And if you want me to do more RWBY content in the future, let me know as well. But with all that said and done, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos showing that you guys enjoy this content and want to see me do more. And I hope you all have an awesome day.